Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another fantastic episode of Turbonomic's #1 podcast. I'm going to keep saying it because it's true. The Greg and Joe Turbo Show. Uh, as always, I'm your host, Joe, joined by my esteemed co-host, Greg. A new adjective for you today, Greg.
Yes.
Illustrious was, I feel like I used that too much.
Welcome.
Today, we're really excited and really lucky to have a real turbo veteran, if you will, join us to chat. Ryan Stone. Hey Ryan, thanks for hopping on today.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Excited, as I mentioned before. I've seen every episode, and I eagerly await the release of the next one to see who's on it and what the subject matter is. So
Got one, Joe.
excited to be
Yep, there it is. And the check's in the mail. We
Uh,
but no, I mean, again, as I mentioned, Ryan, you're a real sort of veteran of Turbo. I know you've been with the company for a really, really long time. And Greg and I have had conversations with a bunch of folks from all over Turbo, and I thought it'd be great to have you on just because I think you have a pretty unique perspective on sort of, the trajectory Turbo has taken, and then more specifically, sort of the trajectory of our professional services team and how that sort of evolved over time. But so maybe we could just start with maybe give a little background about you and sort of your history with Turbo, where it all started.
yeah, sure. So I'll keep it short. I think I kind of lost count, to be honest with you. It's probably been 14, close to 15 years total since day one with Turbo. I came on board back in 2011. We barely had a product in the marketplace. I came on as a seller. Everyone was essentially a seller back then, and was one of the handful of the first initial hires. Did a number of things. Was on the go-to-market side for a while. Large enterprise, service providers, enterprise. Went over to the commercial side, and then kind of started my journey on the post-sale side when we built out our Turbo's first official post-sale team. At that point, it was, I think we called it the customer experience team, and then it became customer success, and then it became TAMs, technical account managers, and here we are today as delivery consultants within the Expert Labs professional services division of IBM. So yeah, that's a little bit about the background. I've done a number of different things, but all customer facing. So it's been fun.
You're in the services side of it now as a delivery manager, right, Ryan?
Yes. Yep. So today we're responsible for delivering paid for services for Turbonomic and Instana.
So as a delivery manager, first of all, how long have you been in a professional services role? I know you've mentioned that as you've gone through the years, but how many of those years was professional services side of the house?
So it's interesting because I guess I have an interesting answer to that question. So like when you say how long have you been on the post, like for me, I hear how long have you been on the post sale side of the house, right? For me, it's been probably, I don't know, half of my time. So about 8 years, 7 years on that side.
That's a good chunk.
Yeah, it's a really good chunk. And I say it's an interesting answer for me because I've really only been on the for-profit professional services delivery side of the house, probably for the better part of a year and a half. And that's really been post-acquisition since we were acquired by IBM.
Sure, right.
And historically, we serviced our customers and we built out a post-sale team because we got to the point where our customer base was getting large enough that we needed to maintain and pay attention to when the renewals were coming due. There was real revenue, a real pile of revenue that needed to be forecasted, and we wanted to keep an eye on our renewal rates and we wanted to make sure churn was low to get us to that point where we could have a successful exit. So for a while, we owned the renewals. We would quote the renewals. We were gold and metricked on renewals, but also informally on product usage and stickiness. So this was well before the journey times, which has since been formalized. And I'll talk about that more in a bit. But so we knew that in order to get a customer to renew, they had to we had to have a good champion. There had to be good usage of the product. They had to be getting value of the product in order to want to renew and expand it. A few years after that, we took a swing at implementing a for-profit services model, right? So we hired some folks that had worked for large companies that had very established professional services orgs that had very significant revenue from those orgs, like an EMC, like an HP, where paid for services was the norm. It was included with every deal, and that was a very strong, mature business. We essentially tried to do it, and it didn't work. Right? It didn't work for our product. It was a tough sell, and at that point, our focus was, we're going to service these customers whether they pay for it or not. Every customer that comes in the door is going to get a TAM, and anything at the enterprise level or around the enterprise level will have a TAM, if not two TAMs, and a customer success manager working together on deployment, implementation, configuration, usage. And that's where we started to build that, what we call today the journey, right? Essentially, the journey we want to take our customers down, whether it's on-prem, public cloud, cloud native, or all three. The usage of our product that we know when they get to certain points, they will be very sticky, they'll be very mature. Our renewal is almost predictable. And that's when you're going to get expansion as well. So we started formalizing that at that point, which still today, obviously, it's kind of what we live by, right? That's what we go by. We talk about the journey. I think everybody, myself included, has it. I have it built into my head. I don't even need to see it anymore when we onboard new folks to our team.
That's one of the other day you said it lives rent free in your head.
Yeah, it lives rent free in my head. I see it in my head. And Joe, you remember when you were hired, learning that, probably looking at it for the first time, probably a number of different people talked you through it. To the point where you could take a customer through it without even pulling it up. Sometimes
I still reference it in my current position. And I guess full disclosure, I worked for Ryan's team for almost 2 years at Turbo. And that was really my entry into the technical side of the business, and it's been great, obviously. But yeah, I mean, now moving over to pre-sales, I mean, I still reference the journey in my conversations with prospects, right? As sort of a roadmap for success, if you will. Like, hey, this is what you can kind of expect with a partnership with Turbo, right?
I like that it's not just a roadmap for success, but it brings common language for everyone involved, right? I mean, as a customer, you can look at it and understand where you're going. As a delivery consultant in a post-sales world that we're in, you can look at it and understand where a customer is going, and you can have conversations with anybody in this org or with the customer, and it's all the same language, it's all the same roadmap, it's all the same journey from inception to completely mature or using the product in every possible way. So it's not just a tool that we've got to help customers become mature, but it also, like I'm saying, it's a common language model that we can build on. And now that I've learned it and I understand it, I don't have to look at it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, so that's kind of a little bit about my background when you say professional services, but a piece I wanted to hit on. So it's super interesting. When we started the company in 2011 and 2010, the term professional services was around, and it's been around for a long time, but it always lived in very mature organizations. Some of them I spoke about, the EMCs of the world, the HPs of the world, Cisco, all the big hardware and storage vendors. Services as a big part of the business. But back then, the term customer success really wasn't a term, to be honest with you. There were no customer success teams. There were no customer success business units. Very rarely did you see a chief customer officer when you look through executive leadership for really any vendor. A lot of that was baked into the go-to-market teams, and it's a lot of what the sales executives kind of own that historically. It wasn't until really we started our customer experience team, we were on that bleeding edge of real post-sale teams, which now fall under that title of customer success. So I think in today, you're seeing customer success as the business unit, and it encompasses a variety of different groups within that. There's professional services, there's tech support, there's customer success, which usually is the account management function, and they usually own renewals. They may own a percentage of expansion. The NRR number, they're responsible for that. All under customer success. And there's usually a CCO, a chief customer officer. It may not be that exact title, which is sitting over that org, and that person has a seat on the executive leadership team, which is very interesting to me, because we started and we had a number of different iterations back in the Turbo days of a post-sale team, as I mentioned, customer experience, customer success. We did the same job. We just kind of changed the names. And then we actually went out and hired a chief customer officer to run that function. And that person was responsible for a lot of the divisions and groups within customer success and or professional services. So that's been something interesting to watch. It's kind of evolve over time. I also think it's got to do with the fact that everyone talks about being customer centric today. It's not a today thing. This has been around the last few years, and I think in the past everyone just talked about it, but people are actually taking action on it now, and you're seeing very substantial post-sale teams, customer success teams being built out. And it goes all the way up to the CEO of these companies, whether it's a software or hardware or a SaaS company, or even a very young private software company with a young offering. They have post-sale teams, and the CEO wants to know what the retention metrics look like, what the maturity metrics look like, what the renewals look like right off the bat. So that's really it's really exciting to see that. And for me to look back, we started in the early days when there weren't a lot of people building these teams out, to just kind of see where it's evolved. So it's I mean, even we've used Gainsight. There's actually software products now that we can go procure and implement and use ourselves, right? It's like if you're a seller and Salesforce comes out, you're like, wait a minute, you tell me I get a CRM now that I can organize all my quotes and my leads and my opportunities. Well, we've got this post-sale has this, and Gainsight's just one of them because they're one of the early folks, but there's a number of post-sale software platforms that are out there that we can use to do our jobs better and service our customers better. Which is just, again, it wasn't, 10, 11, 12 years ago, there was no such thing. If you said, hey, do you guys have any customer success software that you use? People would look at you like you're crazy. First of all, they go, what's customer success? And second of all, what software? So
I see their CEO on LinkedIn all the time.
He's phenomenal.
He is, I mean, he is sort of the epitome of being customer centric. I mean, he's all over the social media with that message.
Yeah,
well, let me ask you though, Ryan, do you think that's, like you said, this sort of concept of customer success and the shift to that sort of model? I know you mentioned, like, sort of when we think of these things, we think of a more mature company. Do you think that's tied more directly to the fact that businesses, especially in this industry, have started to realize just how valuable and how important those renewal dollars are, as opposed to, like, everyone's trying to hunt and get a new logo, and getting that first deal is always great. And I think maybe that's the focus for a lot of, young companies or startup companies, to try to just get those initial deals done, but then sort of really push to being successful in a more mature company is really seeing those renewals, at a really, really high number or a high percentage, and really, being able to get those renewal dollars in every year.
Yeah, I do. I think there's so much press about that right now, just given the macroeconomic environment, right? It's no secret. It's hard to get deals done right now with new logos across. Doesn't matter what vertical, who you're selling to. Everybody can relate to that right now. So I think there's a lot of chatter when you're on LinkedIn and when you're just with blogs, and there's a lot of good and interesting, material out there. But right now, folks are really focused on their current customer base and getting revenue from that, because they're already customers. They can expand usage. They can expand to different teams. There may be different product offerings that the customer may not be using. It could be hey, you've got Turbo, but you don't have Instana, and you're in need of an APM platform. It could be, I'm using Instana as an APM, but I need Turbo to action on this stuff. So I think folks are really honing in on it now, and CEOs and CROs are honing in on it now, because it's the easiest place, given the macroeconomic conditions, to go get revenue from, versus trying to get new logos. Now, that aside, I think a healthy balance between new logos and cultivating your existing customers is very important, especially in a younger company that you're trying to grow. But I think anyone can go out. It's easier for sellers to just go out and just have very transactional sales cycles where they sign a new customer. Okay, great. Move on to the next one. Sign a new customer. Okay, great. Move on to the next one. But the customers that you service adequately and thoroughly, those are the ones that, yes, you're going to get the renewal dollars, but you're also going to get the expansion dollars over time. And I think that's what every company.
And the word of mouth dollars too, right? I mean, the IT field, right? This industry that we're in is, people move around, right? And I mean, people take their experiences with the products they've used with them when they move to new organizations, right? And so, it's really, I think, about that as well, right? Like leaving a good impression well, let me ask you, like, I guess we're talking about, obviously, professional services, customer success is important for a business. It's also important for a customer to make sure they're getting the best sort of value from the product. But obviously, these services are being delivered by people, right? By individual contributors. So again, because you've sort of been in this space for a long time, and you've sort of kind of went through the evolution of Turbo's post-sales organization, I guess, in your opinion, I guess what makes a good customer success manager, or a good technical account manager, or delivery consultant, whatever we want to call it? I mean, what are the things that you think sort of are key for someone to be successful in that area?
It's a great question, right? I think it's to be really great. So let me take a step back. I think there's buckets of greatness, right? There are folks, and we've all seen them, that are technically proficient. And I call them technical wizards. When it comes to getting deep in the tech, in the talk, in the actioning, and digging in deep, they're phenomenal. And at the other end of the spectrum, there's people that aren't great at doing that, but they're very, very good at maintaining relationships, and they're very good at maintaining relationships at all levels. So at the technical hands-on level, at the manager level, and all the way up to the economic sponsor level. Where you're really dangerous is where you have a combination of both. So, and I'm talking about a one-man show. You're doing delivery. You're the sole person doing delivery for customer X, and you're the main guy on that account. So if you can get in and you can be technical when you need to be technical, and you can help troubleshoot when you need to help troubleshoot, but you also know when it's time to tag in the right team, post tech support, right? Hey, I've gotten into this, but let's go get tech support in here. Or bring in the sales team if we're talking about going down a sales path of a sales opportunity. But at the same time, you can update stakeholders, mid-level management, peripheral users of the product that may not be day-to-day folks that are in the platform, and you can update them as far as, here's where we are, here's the good, here's the bad, we've encountered a bug, we've got a product issue here, here's where we're tracking towards the 3 positive business outcomes, Mr. EB, that you said were important. Here's what that looks like. And you can jump back and forth, and you can pull a deck up in a quarterly EBC and hit off a few slides with that whole audience. I think that's where you're really dangerous, right? And I think that's probably the most well-rounded. It's interchangeable, just like you said. It could be a CSM, it could be a TAM, it could be a delivery consultant. But if you can do all that, I think you're pretty good.
I would agree.
Yeah, Ryan, I want to rewind just a touch to something you were talking about before, where you're seeing. I think even you said in the last 10 years or so, the rise in customer success, the idea that it's important to understand and wrap your arms around that recurring revenue, make sure that you keep that recurring revenue nice and tight. Um, do you think, number one, do you agree with me that the idea of subscription based services, subscription based delivery, access to content rather than owning content, that has been a new concept over the same sort of time period? And that, do you think that is sort of one of the things that's driving the need for a professional services or a customer success focused organization?
I I do. I
Okay.
do agree with that. Um, I also think it's I also think it's the move towards the SaaS licensing model. I don't want to, SaaS is a term I think that gets kicked around everywhere nowadays, but
Yeah.
I like the vast majority of let's just call it software products that are in the marketplace today are SaaS offerings. And the way most SaaS offerings are sold is there's a start and an end date there, right? Whether it's um, yearly, 2 year, 3 year, some you even see that are 5 year. So I think that, you know, when you're looking out and you're forecasting what your revenue is going to look like in year two, or, you know, you have a finite amount of days or
Yes.
years to get that customer successful, and make that renewal a no-brainer. And in a perfect world, not only are they renewing, but they're going to go and buy more with a renewal, and they're going to expand their footprint. So I think that drives a lot of the attention on it. No business wants to see a customer churn when that period's over. So after year one, they've churned, or if it's a 2 year SaaS agreement, they've churned and they're not using the product anymore after 2 years.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
Okay. Yeah, it's just something that I was sort of observing and thinking about as you were talking through it, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. One of the words that you had mentioned earlier was the word value. Maybe
Yeah.
help define for our our wide and deep user base what that word value means to you.
Yeah. So it's I mean, when you say value, I see value in all caps, right?
Yes, yes.
It's like, yeah, why is professional services? Why is customer success? Why is it important? Value.
Hmm.
And then to take it a step further, put business in front of that. Business value is, I think, what the most important piece is. Helping, if we help our customers achieve business value that they outline in the sales cycle, so they're engaging with our go-to-market teams to go and solve a problem that they have, or maybe it's a problem that our go-to-market team help them realize they have, and that we also have a solution for.
Yeah.
It's very important that if we can, so the go-to-market team, the way I think about it is the go-to-market team does a great job doing what I just outlined, identifying a problem and positioning a solution to it. Post-sales is so important because we come in, and help the customer actually achieve that value,
Yeah.
right? 9 out of 10 times that doesn't happen in the sales cycle. That's not what their job is to do. They're not going to identify a problem, propose a solution, and then solution the problem in the sales cycle, right?
Right.
That's the post-sales aspect. And I think when you talk to any good seasoned seller, they will tell you all the value is in the services, right? From a seller, they will say that, well, that's where all the value is in the transaction, because they know that um, we're going to come in and go deliver on what was promised pre-sales. We're going to actually solution the the outcome of our product being deployed to solve their problem. And that when that happens, um, it's a renewal, it's an additional sale, it's a happy customer, right? Um, and I think that's why it's so important. In the same breath, those same sellers that will say that, they're the sellers who will not discount services on a deal. Um, because, you know, and this goes back to my force management days, that I still live by is, you know, when you're in a pre-sale cycle and you identify a problem that the customer agrees they have, and you propose a solution, and you agree on the positive business outcomes of that solution. Well, if the customer, when you get to the negotiation phase of that deal with procurement and finance, and they said, well, you've got $1 million proposal in front of us. We can only pay $750,000. Well, guess what that sales guy is going to go and say? Well, you know what? I can't reduce the services dollars on this because those 3 positive business outcomes you outlined, we're only going to be able to achieve one of those if we notch this down. Right. So if you're okay with that, we agreed that this was your problem and this was the solution to it, and this is how we were going to measure success. If I reduce the price of my services, I'm only going to get you halfway there.
Right. Yeah,
if halfway is good for you, then we have to re-architect what we just based this whole deal on. But 9 out of 10 times, the executive buyer is going to go, halfway is not good. I want what we agreed upon. I want the full solution to my problem, right? And I want you to hit all the metrics that I told you were important in solving that problem. And that's why you need services on there. And you'll hear that. I've been told by many seasoned sellers and sales managers and sales directors that same exact thing. Well, why wouldn't you put services on a deal? That's where the value is.
So, let me ask you. So, I mean, obviously, you kind of outlined it here. Just getting services isn't going to make a customer successful, right? It sounds like you kind of described, having agreed upon business outcomes is key to the success of that engagement. But I mean, I guess maybe you don't have to go through the whole thing, but maybe like what are some other sort of keys to a successful post-sales engagement? Like you've already mentioned, having agreed upon business outcomes, but are there other keys that we sort of bring to the table that are sort of,
there's a lot. Engagement? Yeah, there's a lot. I'm going to rattle a few off, and I'm sure I'm probably going to forget some important ones. And these are in no particular order, but the positive business outcomes that an executive buyer has agreed to, metrics to measure success, agreed upon timelines, right? I think in any engagement, there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of things we're focused on, but there's also different priorities. So I think if you can get priorities and a timeline associated with each, and it's okay if they move and adjust, that's good. It's something we should aim to have. A champion, right? And if we don't have a champion, a lot of times it kind of becomes our role and responsibility to build that person or people up in the post-sale engagement and build them into a champion. That's only going to help everyone's job in the long run. It's going to help us get more done from a post-sale perspective. It's going to help the go-to-market team spread into other areas where there could be sales opportunities. So we've got that internal champion, bringing us here and introducing us here and bringing us to that team. And if they move around, like you mentioned earlier, a business sponsor, right? Who at the customer cares the most? And sometimes it can be multiple folks, but who at the customer cares the most about this business problem and how we're going to solve it, right? Having that person, and as I mentioned earlier, having a good communication plan with not only that person, but everybody in between, right? Because everybody cares about different things. The person hands-on may want to just implement it, get it stood up, and use it to get promoted to a different role or a different team. The economic buyer wants to solve his business problems, which tie into the company's bottom line, whether it's being profitable or saving money or whatever it may be. There's a gazillion different things, but I think communicating well to all of those folks lends to a good post-sale engagement. And in this one, I think is often overlooked. It was the last one that popped into my head, but it's not so much customer facing; it's more internal facing for the folks doing the delivery. But you have to be able to work well across teams and across functions. It's not just us. Sales folks for like a great 10 out of 10 engagement post sale. Sales is very involved. Or pre-sales is very involved. You want to be able to communicate and work well with tech support if and when there's a tech support issue that we need their help on. Product management for enhancements and new features and new use cases that may or may not be a fit for that specific customer. Marketing, right? Because if we have a good story to tell and the customer wants to tell it, we want to be able to tell it. That helps everybody, helps the customer, it helps us. And so you really want to be able to work well and leverage your internal team as well. Our executives, right? It may help, even though we're communicating with the executive buyer, we may want to have an executive sponsor aligned on our side to that EB, where they're touching base once a month, could be once a quarter, more or less frequent, depending on the engagement. I think that's helpful as well to really have a well-rounded engagement.
That's a good.
I agree. Yeah.
Having that cross-functional team awareness and an ability to talk with people, to work successfully, across those barriers between organizations is huge.
Yep. Yeah, it's so like we're lucky with Turbo, as you guys know, where the and talking just about Turbo standalone, it's the product is very easy to stand up, very, very easy. There are a lot of different products and services out there where it's heavily on the implementation, right? So it could take months and months just to get the product stood up to that point, where it takes a lot of manpower and a lot of time just to get the product stood up to the point where then you can say, okay, we're stood up, we're deployed, we're configured. Now let's go hone in on using this to go solve the problem you've outlined, right? With our product, it's that much easier to drive value because you can get it stood up in I used to say minutes. It's technically minutes, but depending on, I think that was more so from the on-prem days where you deploy.
I mean, SaaS is like this, right? I mean, yeah.
But so it's different now. It's a little bit longer if you're doing an EKS or an AKS deployment. It's a little bit longer if you're doing cloud targets, but it's still very quick compared to other products that are out there. So
well, we have no agents to manage, right? Shameless no agent. Throw that out there, right? Of course.
Yes.
So I guess, Ryan, this is great stuff, and again, it's great to kind of hear your perspective on this. But to kind of go back to your sort of journey at Turbo, you'd mentioned you started in pre-sales. You're obviously a people person, so you obviously have the personality for both pre and post sales. But clearly you've kind of stuck with post sales, right? And like you said, you've spent the past 7 or 8 years now sort of on this side of the house. So I guess for you personally, like what do you enjoy most about the post sales side, working with customers? I mean, again, there has to be something that's kept you here for so long.
Yeah, I enjoy both, really, to be honest. I mean, if you can't tell, I could probably talk a dog off a bone. I really enjoy the pre and post sales side of the house, and I think my skills from both reflect back and forth, and that's just probably why I enjoy what I do so much. For me, it's the customer side. It's the customer satisfaction when they get that moment of this is awesome. We're really starting to see value here. You've saved X amount of time for us. We've saved X amount of dollars. We could defer a purchase. Our response time of our top business application has decreased by so many milliseconds. And this is awesome. And when that gets echoed throughout the customer org, that is really what excites me. I get excited when a new deal closes. I get excited when a renewal comes in. I get excited when an expansion comes in. But it's those types of wins that I think are awesome. And it's funny. I'll tell 2 super short stories, and it's going to kill me because I forget whose name it was. But when we first acquired SevOne a few years ago, one of their largest, I think still is one of their largest, was Verizon. And one of their post sale, they had a whole team of Verizon. Their post sale team set up a company lunch, and they were telling the story about the implementation of SevOne and the value that was achieved to date. And the customer, Verizon, was so fired up that they had like this mini party and they had a cake that was like Sev One Verizon logo on it. It was awesome. They had this cake, and a lot of the Sev One folks, this was pre-COVID, so they were on site regularly. A couple of different site locations, working with the same group of teams, and they had hit this milestone, and everyone was so excited they literally had a party in the office to celebrate it. And since then, they've doubled what they've done. And I thought of that the other week. I think it was on LinkedIn. I have a friend of mine that works for post-sale at ServiceNow, and they had a client that they hit an implementation milestone with a net new ServiceNow deployment. And it's funny, they did the same thing. They brought a big cake in and it said ServiceNow and the customer name, and everyone was super excited. And that's not where it ends though, right? It was okay, cool. We did that, on to the next milestone, right? We've got more work to do and more value to do. But I think that's when you hear from the customer how their business has improved due to our product and the post-sale work we've put in, I think that's very fulfilling to me. And then, the renewal and the expansion is just icing on the cake after that.
All this talk of cake, I'm going to tell you, I'm hungry now. I'm curious what kind of cake it was, and if it was good. I don't know. Maybe
it looked like a chocolate. I think it was a chocolate.
Slice?
So, like, I couldn't see in the cake. I just got a top picture of it. So.
Fair. But I think that's a good point. And I know I've been in situations working with customers, Greg, I'm sure you have as well, where you really do get that sense of pride. When the customer has that aha moment, right? And you realize that all the work and planning and time that you've kind of put in on this journey, right, is starting to pay off, and people are noticing it and getting excited. I mean, yeah, it's an amazing feeling.
Really get after it and chase that next piece of cake.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, as you guys know, it doesn't get any easier post sale, right? You actually run into a lot of the same struggles and roadblocks that you do in a pre-sales campaign, right?
But there's nowhere to hide though on the post-sale side, because now you're meeting with these people.
There is,
every week.
yeah.
There's pre-sales. We can we do our thing, and then we can pass it off to you guys, and then you guys are the ones that have to deal with all the things that on a weekly basis.
You do. I mean, we pre-sales, we're selling the dream of digital transformation, and then post-sales, we're actually going in and doing digital transformation.
Delivering the dream, right?
You have blockers. You have people that are change averse. You have people that are technology averse. So they were born in the on-prem data center, and when you say public cloud or cloud native, they're like, nope. There's all sorts of things. You have executive sponsors and executive buyers that are in political battles with another business. There's all sorts of things. It's kind of just a continuation from the pre-sales cycle. Okay, we got the deal done. Everyone take a breath. Now we got to go implement the product and do what we said we were going to do. And those things continue. They bleed right over. And I mean, you get small wins and sometimes big wins when you overcome those. I think of the stories from Citi, the stories from JPMC over the years. We've had ups and downs and had to claw back from some deep holes there to get a W. So
it's all about getting that cake at the end of the day. Yeah. You want that cake, you better deliver that dream. Otherwise, no cake for you.
Okay.
No cake for you.
That's sad.
Well, that's awesome, right? And I mean, again, we certainly appreciate you jumping on. It's this
has been great.
Yeah, it's always great chatting with you. And anything I guess you're excited about? Maybe last question for you. Anything on the horizon, Turbo related, IBM related, technology related, anything that's kind of piqued your interest from
kind of Turbo IBM related. I mean, I'm excited about the Apptio acquisition. I think that's
a lot of people
super exciting. The deal has closed. We're starting to see things move around and happen. The integration or the prospective integration with Turbo sounds very exciting. I think it fills a gap with the FinOps piece with cloudability that was there and necessary. And I think we all agree Turbo's not a FinOps product, and I think no matter how much you tried to retool it wasn't going to be a FinOps product. So I think it fills that gap nicely, and I think it will also pair with our with our platform offering. It'll be very interesting to see how we can go to market with Cloudability and Instana and see what we can make happen there. It's back to the macroeconomic environment right now. I think FinOps is a very, as we all know, a very, very hot topic that folks are paying a lot of attention to and that our customers care about right now. It's the bottom line is, where can I save money? So
Joe and I too. It's actually what our last episode was about, was FinOps.
Was it? Yeah. Oh yeah, with Kevin. Yeah,
with Kevin.
That was a good one.
And so, surprise special guest, which you'll have to watch to find out who it is.
I watched it. I know who it is.
Don't tell anyone. Don't tell them, Ryan. No spoilers. It's a spoiler-free podcast. Everyone knows that. But hey, again, Ryan, really appreciate it. And for anyone watching who, may be a Turbo customer and maybe you don't have professional services, reach out to your Turbonomic account executive. They can certainly get in touch with our expert lab sellers, and we can help get you on that on the journey as well. And ultimately, we'll all have cake.
That's right.
Great. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and thanks again, Ryan. I hope you have a great weekend. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And
hit the bell.
Ring the bell. That's right.
Smash it.
Excellent.
Smash that bell.
Smash the bell. But no, thanks again, everyone, and I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the next one.
That's right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Have a great weekend.